I don't know. Sometimes divorce, people just do it for no reason. If you have a reason, I understand. But if you don't, there's no reason. I don't know where you go from your everything I want to I want everything you have in few years. I think we should make it difficult on those who just want to get a divorce like that. We should have a divorce shower. Yes. You have to invite everyone you invited to the wedding and hand them back their gifts. Bring the priest and have him repeat the vows, but say don't instead of do. I promise not to bother her anymore and to leave her alone till death do us part. You may slap the groom now. And then have the wedding singer singing, all by myself. But I love my wife, and we have the same habit, which makes it hard for us. We like. All right, hello and welcome to another episode of Laughter for All with comedian Nazareth. I am Nazareth. I'm in Corona Studios here, and we're gonna have a great episode today. My guest I will introduce officially in a minute. But you guys, if you know someone, a couple who are dealing with infidelity, couples' marriages on the rocks, or they have a great marriage, I want to know how to keep it going. My guest today will be the one you need to listen to, Tina Konkin. I'll introduce her in a minute. But first, let's talk about California. It's under 60 degrees right now. It's really nice and cold for us. It's and if you go lower than 55, I'm gonna evacuate. Today, what did I do? What did I do last week? Let's talk about that. Well, last week I had a few shows, but then on Saturday morning, thanks to Laughter for All, I drove to, it's called a ranch for people with addictions that they live there for a year at the ranch. It's called the River's Edge Ranch, and there was no river. So I kept driving looking for a river, ended up in like the Serene Valley. I don't know if Loserine is one of those pills that you can addict it to, but it was empty. So I found the place, and I don't know why they called the River's Edge, and there's no river. So I said, you guys could have called it like 70 miles away from the nearest drug dealer. I mean, if you want to name something, whatever you want, so that was it. So there were over 100 men, and the nicest thing about this is it was their Christmas event. So their families, a lot of moms came, and one guy, he was married. His wife moved to Nashville, and he'd never seen his baby. And that morning, it was the first time he met his baby. So it was really moving and touching. And of course, this man comes up. He's in his 60s. And he's talking about how he had, issues with drugs all his life. And then one day he came to the ranch, and he saw men praying, and they had a board that says the name, put a name of someone we can pray for. He wasn't even a Christian, but he wrote his daughter's name, and they prayed for her. And then his daughter came out, and she said she was living in Sacramento. She's on drugs and all that, and life is miserable. And one day she woke up, and she said, I need to go to church. So she went to a church in Sacramento, surrendered her life to Christ, completely turned around. And that was the same day that man said he asked the people to pray for his daughter. People are crying, and guess what? Next, comedian Nazareth, come onto the stage. So I'm walking on stage, and people are crying. I look at a guy who looks like Farmer John, with his overalls. I'm making fun of him. I asked the guy, what do you do for a living? He goes, I'm a pipe fitter. And I said, at a drug house, right? You just do a pipe. Hey, you should smoke this. You smoke that. You smoke that. And they were laughing. We had a great time. I ended up sharing the gospel at the end and accepted Christ, and it was amazing. Then at night, I did a corporate event in South Coast Plaza, California. My wife was shopping at the same time I was making money. It was one of those, the transfer of money is going at the same time. I'm making the money, she's spending the money, and it was a fight for time. I'm trying to finish my show early so I can catch her before. No, I'm just kidding. But she was at South Coast Plaza while I was doing my show. It was a corporate gig. Those are we call Take the Money and Run. Great show. Friend of mine, Yusuf Subhan, his family. He's a great to have a big inspection company, and it was a great time. We had a great time, except for the waiters, and the waitresses kept walking in front of me. And what do you do at that time? You just do your show. And anyway, so that was my week. And then Sunday we were at Phil Laboratory, a friend of mine, a great CPA from, the IRS, problem solver, amazing. If you have problems with the IRS, he's not paying me for this, but I'm just his friend. So we went to his Christmas party. And at the party, I ran into a lady named Myron. She owns a media company, production company. And she was just saying, she goes, Nazareth, you don't understand this, but I bought a lot of your DVDs and I gave them to people who go through cancer who are under 30 years of age. And she said, you don't understand the impact that your comedy has on them while they're going through chemo or while they go. And she said one family, I gave him to them, and the lady played it with her son, and a young son, and she goes, I haven't seen him laugh since he got the cancer, and that day he was laughing and laughing. So really moving. This stuff fueled me, guys. I'm not motivated by money. Money is needed for the ministry and to put my kids at UCLA and colleges, yes. But what I'm motivated with, what fuels me is to know that comedy has an impact. See, when I go on stage, my main goal is to honor Jesus, to make Jesus lifted up so that he will draw the audience to him. So that's my goal from this show. I want people to laugh hard, but then I want to lead them to the source of joy. But to hear that extra layer of impact on people being moved by, or touched or healed by that. I heard that in Orange County, they used to play my videos at the cancer centers, I was told by one cancer survivor. So it's really amazing to know that this is happening. So thank you so much, whoever you are. If you're, just remember laughter is very important. And today, my guest, I am so excited. I asked her and she said yes. I was like, what? You're really going to take it? And she did. And she's here with us in the studio. I'm going to officially introduce her. Tina Konkin, for over 32 years, she has been helping heal the brokenhearted through her story of abuse and abandonment. Tina has touched thousands of lives by demonstrating that your past doesn't have to control your future. She's the founder and director of R3 Lifeline and facilitates the intensive relationship lifeline and the couples retreat. A sought-after motivational speaker and a believer in living above the line. Tina has the ability to see past the facade and through to the real issues. As a speaker, Tina is engaging, entertaining, and inspiring. She gets real and has the ability to bring the audience along with her. Tina's captivating charisma brings laughter, tears, and emotions to her audience. For the past 25 years, Tina has facilitated hundreds of seminars for youth, adults, couples, and families. She's a sought-after speaker for women's groups, conferences such as the California Women's Conference, Smart Marriages, NARME, etc. Also churches and businesses across the United States and Canada, as well as overseas. Tina has also been featured on radio, television, and Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, Real Housewives of Orange County, and The Today Show. Tina Konkin is a resource for many churches, counselors, organizations, and the Dr. Phil Show. So Tina, welcome to our show.
Nazareth, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming. And wait, I didn't know that you were born in Denmark? No, not Denmark. In Belgium.
Belgium, yes.
Tell us about it. So you were born. What happened after that? After you were born in Belgium?
You just want me to tell you what happened after I was born? I think my parents took me home from the hospital.
Okay.
They did do that.
They did, yeah.
They did. My mom might have wanted to leave me there, but they decided they should take this baby home. Because apparently right from the hospital, I got my days and my nights mixed up. So I would sleep all day and keep them awake all night.
Oh, okay.
So before they went home, she asked the nurse if she could just leave me in the nursery, I think. They said no.
When did the abuse start at home?
I think the abuse at home was really that, I joke about it, but I was really unwanted. My mom did not want children. And, go figure, she gets pregnant right on the honeymoon. So she didn't get much of a break. And that took me a long time, Nazareth, to get through because, even going through therapy myself, I found out that there is nothing more. You can get over more abuse, physical abuse, even rape, they say. You can get through that easier than you can get through rejection of a parent. Because the human heart can't accept. The thing that we want most is to be accepted. Mm-hmm. So if the very people that brought you into this world don't accept you or don't want you, it is one of the hardest things to actually get over.
And your dad was the same way too?
No, my dad wasn't. My dad really did want children, but I think that made it even worse for my mom because instead of being sympathetic towards her, instead of understanding where she was coming from, he would just make her feel like she was such a horrible person. Like what mother rejects her own child, And that took me a long time. And the reason I do the work that I do today was because at the age of 35, I began to reject my own kid. And that's... talk about you never want to be like your mother or you never want to be like your dad or, if you promise yourself you will love your kids, right? So here's my kid at 8 years old, right? A child that I wanted because I was going to prove children needed to be wanted. So much so that I went into children's ministry and I'm a ventriloquist.
Oh, okay? You are?
I am. And my biggest reason for being a ventriloquist is because as a child I didn't laugh. And all I wanted was to make children laugh. I wanted them to forget about their pain. And that's why I love comedians. And Nazareth, when you asked me to be on the show, and I thought, what could I say that's funny? I mean, there's nothing funny about my book. There's nothing funny about the work that I do. But yet inside my heart, all I ever wanted to do was make children laugh. And I remember as a child, the thing that made me laugh the most, was when I remembered a child evangelist came to our church and he was a ventriloquist. Oh. And I remember really losing myself in that. And I loved Bible stories. And so as I began to see the world from a painful place, I thought one day I just want to make kids laugh. Even if they're crying at home, I just want to make them laugh for a minute, And so that's how I got into children's work. So imagine, I get married and I tricked my husband into saying we were safe. We were practicing safe sex. I tricked him. I made him believe that the Catholic way, of counting the days and all that was safe. Well, I got pregnant.
You got pregnant.
It didn't
so
work.
You didn't want kids? He didn't want kids right away?
Not right away. He just said, look, we're young. Let's take a couple years for ourselves and both work and build, a little bit and just all the normal and be free and, all that. So I kind of agreed and I said, but I don't want to do any, I'm not Catholic. Yeah. But yet I found the Catholic way of doing it according to me.
How many kids did you have?
On the Catholic way? No.
No.
I ended up with 2 children.
Okay.
And then I adopted one. So we have 3 children. But so 5 months after we're married, he wanted to wait a couple years. And 5 months after we're married, I'm pregnant. So, but I wanted, that more than anything. And I wanted a baby. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to prove that, children, and of course I'd already been involved with children. I'd already done a lot of work with kids. So that was really where my heart was at. And I tell you, this baby that I had, she was the most beautiful little girl. There was only one thing wrong with her. Nobody told me that babies sleep that much. And so she was interrupting all my playtime. She was the doll I never had. I changed her. I had a Barbie house for her. Like I made a real, she had the crib. It was just like the dollhouse I never had, I created in my own home with this baby. And I was able to afford to stay home, And so I was blessed. And then all of a sudden this child turns 8 and I begin to push her away. And we've had a son in between, 3 years later, and no problems there.
No problem with the son, but the daughter
The daughter I started push away. And then it started getting, to be a real problem in our marriage. And that's when I went to an intensive. I tried going to a counselor, it didn't work. So I'm a counselor myself. But when it comes to the crisis moment where this is do or die, we're either going to stay together, we're going to break up, or I'm going to lose my children and something's wrong. Now, I wasn't about to lose my child, but in my heart, I'd already lost my child. And I knew this was wrong. And yet, Nazareth, talk about comical, I'm the children's pastor.
You're the children's best.
Living behind closed doors with really what's going on, and yet I'm the best thing since life's bread when it comes to families and children and making them laugh and telling parents to go easy on them, but I'm living this double life at home because I'm pushing my own daughter away.
How did she feel? How did your daughter
Well,
feel?
I thought I was hiding it really good. We're Christians. We know how to hide.
Right, of course.
We know how to put the mask on, and put the smile on. I was doing everything a child needed. She never missed a meal. I made her lunch. I washed her laundry. I mean, what more did she need, right? And so I thought I was hiding it really good until one day she went to spend the weekend at my sister's, and we had children around the same age. And so, she told my sister, "Why does Mommy love my brother and not me?" And my sister said, "What's going on over there? Like, why would she ask me that?" I was always the mother that everybody wanted to be up until then, right? And I realized the cat was out of the bag and I needed help. And that's when I found out that going to a counselor didn't help me because I was too smart for that. I knew my Bible. And this counselor, who was very recommended, wanted to go into my past and talk about me and my mom, and my own rejection issues. And I said, no, that's under the blood, and Jesus took care of that at the cross. And of course I've forgiven my mom, and all of that. So, and I quoted Philippians 4:8, putting the past behind and moving forward. And he looked at me, and everybody thinks Dr. Phil coined this, but he didn't. That counselor looked at me and said, well, let me know how that works out for you, Wow. And I walked away after 2-3 sessions, and it didn't help. And I carried on for about another year. And things got really bad. Then I got really serious, spiritually, because now my husband is not happy. And the house is always tense, and now everybody knows in my immediate family, the children are. And so, long story short, I ended up finding this program run by Dr. Phil and his partners before he was the celebrity. He used to do personal workshops and personal growth workshops, and I call it counseling on steroids, but you get real, real quick. And I went to that, and it was life-changing. And I remember it was a 5-day program, and I looked at my husband as we walked out of there, and I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And he agreed. He said, we have been doing church work for, at that time, probably about 12 years. We'd been pastoring and working in the church, and we'd never seen 20 people. It was a small group. We still only do small groups, but we'd never seen 20 people in less than about 4 or 5 days change so dramatically. Now, my husband and I grew up in the church, so we never had a born-again experience like you've had. I've heard your story. It's unbelievable. We grew up in the church, so...
Where, in Canada?
In Canada, yes. And so we didn't know what being born again really meant. We just knew we believed in Jesus, and that was your ticket to heaven, and Jesus was always there. We never not believed. Now I remember the day I accepted Jesus. I remember how it felt as a 5-year-old. I remember thinking
in Belgium.
In Belgium, I accepted Jesus. Yes, and it was life-changing for me as a child, and that gave me even more reason to want to work with children, because that got me through the abuse. That got me through the abandonment. That got me through the rejection when I came to Canada. It was always Jesus. Right? So the Jesus that I knew that I met at 5 years old was that powerful. But to have what I would hear, like your story, to not believe, I don't remember not believing, right? So there wasn't this big life change until I went to that weekend. Now, that to me, I remember looking at my husband and him looking at me and goes, this is what being born again must feel like to someone who's never had Christ in their heart. It was the first time that we felt a weight drop. And that weight was the weight of unforgiveness.
To your parents?
Yes. I always believed I had forgiven my mom, but I never had with my heart. I did because it was the right thing to do.
Did you call her? Did you talk to her?
You know, I did not. I just went to her house, as we always did on Sunday.
Oh, she was in Canada with you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're all living in Canada. The Dr. Phil program, his partner, came to Canada to do a program. And there was 20 of us in that first class that ever was done in Canada. And we finished on Sunday, that program. The following Sunday, I go visit my mom, as we always did as a family. We all go on Sunday for Sunday lunch, big Italian lunch, after church. And I walk into her house, and it feels different. And I hug her, and I say hello, and I kiss my parents, and we sit down for lunch, and everything's different, but nothing's changed. She doesn't even know, right? And all of a sudden, she said, Tina, where have you been? And I said, why? She goes, because something's different. Then she tells me, nobody knew where we had gone, okay? But she tells me that during that weekend while I was away, she started to weep. That's why she asked me where I'd been, because she tried to call and nobody knew where I was. They said, oh, she's away. The babysitter just said, her and Braun went away for the weekend.
That's
right?
the Lord.
So but that weekend she was overcome. So here, while I was forgiving her, through whatever you want to call it, I call it through the Spirit.
The Spirit of the Lord.
Was releasing her. And everything changed after that. Everything, but at the same time, I remember I went there to help me with the rejection I had for my daughter. And when that forgiveness for my mom happened, the chains with my daughter totally gone. Because I realized it wasn't her I was rejecting. It was still me.
How old was your daughter when you forgave, when you had that change?
When I first started rejecting her, slowly it builds, she was 8, which is funny. 8 years old is when I came to Canada. And that's when I experienced the worst abuse, is when I came to Canada, right? The worst rejection. Because then it wasn't just rejection from my family, but I got taken away from my grandparents, the only source of love I had. Then I got bullied at school because I didn't speak English.
Oh, really?
Then I started gaining weight, and so I got bullied for that. So there was a whole, Canada was the worst thing that I believe ever happened.
Really? You think sometimes it's in the States?
Now looking back from an adult, no, I was the best decision my parents ever made. But as a child, that bullying was worse than anything I'd ever experienced.
So even if you're European, you get bullied just because you have an accent?
They'd never seen, I didn't speak English at all. And I was in the the third grade. I had to be put back in first grade because I didn't speak English. And they had never seen a non-English speaking child.
Oh, in Canada.
So in
Look
this
at it now.
little town, yeah. So we
now
showed
there's
up
no English speakers in Canada.
Exactly. Now you arrive in Vancouver, but that wasn't my first town. My dad was a miner, so we were in a little mining town way up north.
I know exactly. I've been there. It's called, let me call it. It starts with a letter S. It smells like phosphor, or it's north of Ontario, 3 hours north.
Yeah. So there's there that you're talking about. But where we came into was the Inco mine, and that was in Manitoba, which is the next.
Yes.
The next. So you think maybe of Salisbury?
Salisbury. I did an event for miners there.
Okay, but that's also and that's all that area is mining, right?
Oh,
they've shut down that. So that's where my dad ended up. It was called a place called Thompson, Manitoba, 700
You got bullied
miles.
in Manitoba?
Can you believe it?
Nobody. I don't know. I've never met anybody who was bullied. And
anything that's different. Right? I was different.
I have to ask you this. Have you ever had Belgian waffles?
Oh.
You're from Belgium. You know how to make Belgian waffles?
I do.
What's the best recipe for Belgian waffles?
Well, I'll tell you, the best recipe is the old recipe, and I don't know that we even have the right flour here for that.
Oh, so you got to go to Belgium for
so
that.
Whenever anybody comes over from Belgium, there's two things they're told to bring. One is waffles.
Waffles?
Right? And the second thing that we ask them to bring is what we used to call la tarte au riz.
Tarte au riz.
Hey, that's really good, Nazareth. I'm impressed.
My mom was a French teacher.
Oh, okay. Well,
But
there you go. All right. So, and that was a rice pie, and they don't make them here. And yeah, so every time somebody came from Belgium, those were the two things the suitcases were filled with. Now, the tradition we have kept is we make crepes. Now, we don't call them crepes. We call
Crepes.
we call them bouquets.
Bouquets.
Bouquets. And my grandchildren will tell you they know how to make bouquets even though they're very little. And so
What's the difference
that's
between
the
a bouquet and a crepe? A crepe.
You know what? A bouquet is Belgium and a crepe is French from France.
Now, do you
But
guys
it's
speak...
exactly the same.
Oh, in Belgium, do you speak French or Dutch? Or what? Do you have your own language?
In Belgium, there's the French side, which is where I was born, and then there's the Flemish side.
Flemish. That's French.
Yeah. It's on the Dutch side.
On the Dutch side.
Yeah.
Okay, so the
but
Flemish.
I was born on the French side, so we spoke French.
So is that better than the Flemish people?
Yeah.
Does the Flemish people look like us, or they like they're Flemish?
Totally, no.
Blemished. I'm not
Blemished?
blemished.
I don't think they're blemished. No,
Okay.
They look just like us.
And
Yeah.
so your daughter was 7. No, when
8.
so 8 when you started the rejection. When you started the healing, how
She was 10.
does she remember this today?
Oh, yes. She said she's quite the comedian. She'll come because she worked with me and her dad, and her dad passed away 5 years. It'll be 6 years at Christmas, actually. But she used to say, the reason my parents have this business is because of me. So please thank me that you're getting the help that you're getting because I had to suffer. It was my story. So she'll make sure she was the victim.
You know, if I was a ventriloquist, I would speak on my kids' behalf in public. I would just keep them quiet and I'll say stuff like, oh, my parents are the best. My parents are the best. And make them look like they're... I have friends who are ventriloquists. That's awesome. Do you still do that? Or
I do once in a while when people ask me to do it for children's church or they'll ask me to... Or I went to India about 4 years ago and we were traveling the orphanages. Of course, I didn't have my dummy with me, so I just grabbed one of the pastors. One of our pastors, not their pastors. He was a dummy? Yeah, he became my dummy. He sat on my knee and... I just said, you just, yes. I said, you just move. He was the worship leader.
How big was he?
And he was really big.
And you're a tiny person.
Yeah, he was so big. And he could feel my legs. So every once in a while, he would kind of just, not put the weight on my legs. But it was the funniest thing ever.
That's okay in India. You don't do that here in the U.S. So let's see. Now, you're doing marriage counseling. Any funny story? Anything happened that... like something funny. We're laughter for this topic is so serious.
I went from making children laugh, and one of the rules when I got married, my husband sat me down and he said, "Now, sweetheart, I know you've been used to talking for this dummy for a long time," and he said, "Now in marriage, right? I will ask you not to speak for me. Like I have my own voice. I don't want to be the dummy." And I said, "Oh, note taken, But when I do marriage counseling, I'll never forget one time I'm counseling this couple and they're sitting there and they're just going on. I can't get a word in, right? There's nothing I can't go, okay, stop. Now just let him talk, right? And I do the whole counselor thing. Yeah. But of course, our sessions are in group, right?
Okay.
So the whole class is there. So it's important that I retain control because if I don't, right, then you lose the power, right? And so I'm standing and I'm losing. It's evident.
This lady's just talking.
Yeah, and she's not talking. She's up and she's over him and she's going crazy on him, right? And I'm going, stop. This was his turn. But the minute he says one word, it's like the dummy and my dummy gets out of control. Right away, I have to be the voice and say nice things, right? But I can control that. Well, this lady was doing that, right? And I'm going, this is not good. So Nazareth, I don't know what came over me, and I finally said, stop. Both of you. And it scared them, right? And the whole class just kind of stood up, And I said, you, lady, are going to do what I tell you to do. And she looks at me. Now I've got her attention. I said, you're going to sit on his knee. And she looked at me. She goes, what? I said, sit on his knee now. Sit. Right? And he's like this. And I said, open your arms. So he opens his arms. And I said, now sit. She sits down. I said, don't you say a word. And I said, now put your arms around her. And I said, and hold her. Uh-huh. And the whole class is like, what is she going to do? I have no idea what I'm going to do. I just needed them to shut up. Right? I just needed them to shut up. And finally I said, now you're going to sit there until she feels that hug is a love hug. And I said, we could be here for 3 days if that's how long it takes. Right? Well, before you know it, it just calmed them down, right? And it's like a 2-year-old that's having a tantrum, right? You just kind of have to bring the calm in. But I'll never forget, after they leave the room, they go on a break and my husband is there and our team is there. And I'm looking at them and they're looking at me and we burst into such laughter because where did you pull that out of? And I said, I didn't know what else to do. I said, it was just like, and they said, a couple of the people, I said, where's so-and-so? They said, they're still laughing under the table. Because that woman looked terrified, right?
When you told her to stop.
When I told her to shut up and sit down on his knees, right? Well, that's not normally what you would want from a counselor, right?
Right. Yeah. You know what? I did an event for you last week.
Yes.
For your funders, for your ministry. It's amazing ministry. And what you do is you deal with couples who are really at the brink, or that's it. There's no other hope for them. Exactly. And they come to you. And you gave me a book. And the book is called How God Used the Other Woman Saving Your Marriage After Infidelity.
Yes.
And I started reading the book. Well, first of all, I walked home with this book. Husbands, if you want to buy this book, don't bring it home. Because my wife looked at it, and me and my wife are solid. I mean, she knows, and that's something I'm going to ask you, like, well, how can you encourage men to make sure they stay away from that? Right. Like, I'm traveling on the road all the time. Mm-hmm. And one thing I do is, and I always teach that at the conference, the Christian comedy conference, that the first thing I get on the TV, I put the pictures of my family. I used to put pictures. Now I put the screen. I open Skype to my home, so I have a window to the house. So I'm always in good connection. Accountability. We have Finder Friends. My wife knows exactly where I'm at every time. Right. When I finish the show, before the show, I say, honey, I'm going on the I'm going to go on stage, or I'm going to, I'm driving to the church and stuff. She knows exactly where I'm going to be, what I'm going to do. And then after the show, when I come home, I call her from the hotel. I said, hey, I just got here. Let me settle down. I'll call you before I go to bed. So, they have access to me 24 hours. Okay. I never carry a conversation long with a woman alone. I will not be alone. If a bunch of ladies say, yeah, let's go to dinner after the show. No, I'm not going to dinner with you guys. Mm-hmm. I always finish. I always take the first plane out, so I have a reason to go to the hotel and sleep. Right. You always put these boundaries.
Yes.
And I always want my wife to know exactly where I'm at. Yes. And that doesn't mean I'm a great husband or I'm better than others. No, I'm just saying that this is the stuff we do. So I walk in home with this book, How God Used the Other Woman, and she's like, what is this book? What are you bringing? I said, I just did an event and the author, Tina Konkin, she was there and she gave me the book. She goes, are you trying to prepare me for something? I said, no, I'm not. But I mean, it just... So anyway, last night I started reading. I'm not a reader. I'm an audible. I'm a listener. I listen to a book. I don't read fast. I don't know why. I'm just slow reader. And I started reading it. And I started at 9:30. At 11 o'clock, I could not put it down.
Wow.
It was really. So the question is, you and your husband were marriage counselors.
Yes.
And he cheats on you with your
one
best friend.
With a close friend, yes.
Tell us about that and how you handled
So
it.
everything you just described about what you do to protect yourself, we were, ministers first, pastors first, before we started doing these marriage workshops. Right. And so we had all those safeguards. As pastors, we're taught in our pastoral training, never with a woman by yourself. If you're a counselor, you keep the door open at the church, the whole thing, all the safeguards. And we had all those. You don't get into a car with a woman by herself. If you are a pastor and you end up going to visit someone that's sick and then find out her husband isn't there, you don't go in, or you always travel with someone else. And so we had it all. And there were boundaries everywhere with us, except with this one couple that we were really close friends with. Mm-hmm. And my husband was going through a really hard time, and it was a hard season. His mom was dying, and he was the baby of the family. He was doted on, and he was very close to his mom and dad, very close. Mm. And it took us by surprise. Well, it was then, as you get further into the book, that you find out my story of some of the things that we make, that we don't resolve from our past, come back to haunt us. And that's why to us in the work that we do and in the workshops, we don't look at the marriage as it is today or the trouble you're having today. We don't look at, rather, you're having a hard time with communicating. We look at, where did that come from? What happens to you when communication breaks down? Some people get overly communicative, and overly vocal, and others withdraw. Well, that came from somewhere, right? So depending on what you saw, heard, and experienced, well, I'd never experienced my husband in emotional pain. He was the one that always kept things, everything was good, everything was alive, everything was, it was a good time, it was about fun. And if we fought about anything, it's that life wasn't serious to him. It was too short to be too serious, right? And I was always the one, so I have to be the parent that has to say no. Well, the kids listen to you better. He wanted to be the good parent, And so, but we balanced each other. So it worked in our marriage. Right?
Right.
But when I saw him sink, I didn't know what to do. Then I go back, and of course it wasn't till God showed me what was it that I picked up back here that caused me not to nurture. Same thing with the rejection of my daughter, the same thing with trying to be nurturing to my husband. That all required, if you weren't a baby, you didn't need nurturing.
Yeah. I don't want to interrupt it. This is awesome. But the thing is, like, sometimes I have a joke about how women always want their husbands to be, open and share their feelings and stuff. Not really. Because the minute they start opening up and start tearing up, come on, you wuss. Come on, man up. Man up.
It's exactly what I did. It's exactly what I did.
That's why I tell men, whenever you want to open up to your wife, either be cutting onions or trying a maze to see how it works. Because the minute they see you tear up, like, man up. Well, you're the one that wants me to be transparent and open and share my... Don't share your feelings. Guys, this is a trap. Don't. Unless you're cutting onions.
Exactly.
That's what you did. You told him to man up.
Exactly. I did. I said, you got to go see your mom. Like, quit crying about it, And he'd say, no, I don't think I'm going to go today. Right? It's just... And he kept withdrawing and withdrawing. I said, what is wrong with you? And I'd be like that, thinking I was helping him. So just go see your mom. Well, I finally came to the place where I went to my friend. And I said, listen, you've had a parent die. You know what it's like. I don't. I have both my parents. I don't get it. He's not going to see his mom. That's just wrong.
Yeah.
You just got to do what you... See, and I came from a home of obligation. You do what you're obligated to do.
Right.
The European, you just do it.
Yes.
right? Doesn't matter if you don't go by
It's not
feelings.
about feelings, yeah.
It's not about feelings, right?
Yeah.
You just do it.
Right.
And he was going, like, I could hear him say to his sister on the phone, I can't come. You know, his mom was 4 hours away at a hospital. I can't come. I've got too much work. And I'm going, what work?
Go see your mom.
Go see your mom. I said, I can handle the work.
Yeah.
Right? And so it became, but I saw that we were drawing apart. So I sent my friend in.
Your best friend.
Yeah. So I sent, you know, and I just said to her, I said, can you just do something? You know, now, one thing about my good friend was one of her qualities was she was very nurturing, but not, that was a quality. She was nurturing to my kids. She would tell me, don't be so hard on them. She was nurturing to me. She'd be the first to feel your feelings, right? So now, looking back, we share with couples exactly what you've just said, safeguards.
Safeguard.
What are your safeguards? Because vulnerability meets opportunity, and you're in trouble.
Wow, say that again.
Vulnerability meets opportunity,
And you're in trouble.
and you're in trouble.
Are you listening, husbands? Are you listening, wives?
So my husband at that moment was very vulnerable. He wasn't looking for Gestapo to tell him what to do. He was looking for, I know what that feels like.
And your friend did that.
And my friend did that, right? So neither one of them, and this is what I want the listeners to hear, most of us don't get into infidelity because we plan it, or because we want it, or because it's something we aspire to do, hurt our children and hurt our family. And that's why I say God used the other woman.
Well, your husband was vulnerable. What about her? What was her need that she...
She connected. See, there's several ways that people can connect. One, it's through pleasure. The other's through pain. Right? They connected at a place of pain.
Oh, her parents died.
Yeah, her pain and what she saw him going through made her connect back. And she was an understanding person. She was someone that was nurturing in that moment.
And
right?
they broke the barrier. He was alone with her. Was it like a
Yes.
one time or several?
No, it was a one time. The feelings built over a couple of months.
And that's
infidelity.
infidelity.
Yes.
Sometimes it's emotional. It's not
Exactly.
Okay.
And
so
I
that-
want to make that clear because it never starts in the bedroom. That's not where it starts.